There's something that you may be hiding, and man, let me tell you, it is so easy to hide this one thing. The one thing you may be hiding from the world can drastically transform the way that you connect, the way that you make friends, the way that you make love. The list goes on, but you might be hiding it. Tune in to find out what it is.
Born in 92 on the block with the sharks. Come from a different cloth, y'all will get ripped apart. You want it diamond, then you gotta get it in the dark. We dropping nuggets like Carmelo with the Rucker Park. Now we eating from state to state, we scrape the plate. I put my eggs in a basket, took a leap of faith. I took a chance, now we grow and see the impact. Decoding success with special guests, now let's bring Matt.
Welcome to the top 1% globally ranked podcast, Decoding Success. This is your host, Matt Labrie, and I am so excited to have you here watching this episode or listening to this episode if you are catching this on the go. Man, there's so many podcasts in this world that you could be listening to, but you found this episode, or maybe this episode found you. And for a particular reason, right? Maybe there is something within this episode that you need, and then I'm also going to put this out there. Maybe there's something in this episode that someone in your life needs. So I'm going to just plant that little seed that we're going to want you to share this episode when the time comes. But all of that to be said, my life drastically changed when I stopped hiding this one thing. There was a part of my life, a pretty large part of my life, to be honest, where I acted as if I was bulletproof. And as we know with 50 Cent, no, he's not bulletproof. I don't think any of us are. I did not let anything phase me in the most unhealthy way possible. In fact, I always acted as if nothing was ever wrong. That's not the worst mentality to have if you are able to compartmentalize and go through life, but when that is the only place you can be and just go head on acting as if nothing has ever phased you, living a life of being numb, you're actually living in the complete opposite of what life is about. Life is about being able to feel. And for years upon years in my early 20s, potentially even a little bit today, there was this version of Matt that felt bulletproof. Not just felt, but acted bulletproof. And the more I acted bulletproof, now I could look back, 2020 vision hindsight, as always, guys. I can look back and tell you I did that for protection. I was trying to protect myself from being hurt again. At that particular juncture in my life, I would have never once said that I was hurt. I didn't know I was hurt. I was totally blind to the idea of potentially being hurt. I didn't want to admit, nor would I have been able to admit, that I felt rejected, isolated, neglected, just like all of that. Furthermore, like there was so much anger within me. And as we know, anger is just merely on the surface, but I never let any of that show. And the reason I'm sharing all of this with you here is because doing so was a form of protection. But what I was also doing by hiding the real me was stopping myself from connecting. So I was getting protection and I was losing connection. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but that's too damn good not to share, right? So the bulletproof version of us, the person that's not willing to be vulnerable, the person that's not willing to be honest, the person that's not willing to go down that path protects themselves. And on the other hand, you lack connection. All of that to be said, when we hide our wounds, we perpetuate isolation. By sharing our stories, we cultivate belonging. So it wasn't until I finally felt comfortable to actually share. By no means am I sitting here to tell you that you should go from the mountaintops or your rooftop if you're in New York City or wherever and just start spewing. There's a time and a place for that. But I'm talking about when you're even with your friends, your closest of friends. My closest of friends at that time were getting bulletproof Matt, the unfazed Matt. And that kept our friendship at a particular juncture. It never allowed us to meet each other on a different level. there was a place of not feeling safe to do that. And in full transparency, if you don't do that, there's a possibility your friends won't do that, right? Sometimes you have to take the lead. And in certain situations, maybe other friends would try to go there with you and then they realize you weren't following their lead, so they backed up too, right? There's a level of vulnerability that is matched. It's an energy that is matched. And when you act unfazed and when you act like, hey, nothing's wrong with me and, my life is so perfect, you derail the connection you could potentially have. That's a really weird place to be in, especially for a black sheep who has felt isolated because, in a sense, you're only contributing to the isolation that you previously had felt. You're actually keeping yourself isolated by trying to protect yourself. By trying to protect yourself, the connection that God has divinely placed in your life is not being accessed. You're not accessing the gift that's being provided. For so many years, I didn't tap into the gift. I felt like a black sheep my entire life growing up. My friends were the closest thing I felt to love. And again, this is no knock, this is no shame, this is no nothing on my loved ones. I love them dearly, and I am absolutely grateful for my journey because it got me here in this seat in front of these cameras to be able to talk to all of you. But at the same time, God divinely placed at a particular time in my life family that was not bloodline. And the family that was not bloodline was in a way rejected because of my lack of vulnerability. That lack of vulnerability delayed my connection with them. Now I'm grateful. I know these people are meant to be in my life because they still are. So they dealt with that unfazed, hardened, like bulletproof version of Matt. And if you want to know what, I could get them in the studio and have them tell you stories about the old version of me, that very hurt version of me. And you would be like, no, 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 that's not Matt that I know that hosts Decoding Success. But it very much so is. Very much so is. It delayed our connection. And that is exactly, if you are hiding the pain, if you are hiding the vulnerable version of you, you're delaying your connection. You're delaying the intimate relationships that you could be having, or maybe one if you're monogamous, right? Maybe you're not. Maybe you want more than one intimate relationship. And you could have more than one intimate relationship, maybe just, all right, that's a whole other story. Regardless, you're delaying that or you're rejecting that. That's probably the better way to put it. You're rejecting that intimate relationship with a partner, a life partner, a soulmate. You're rejecting those intimate relationships with your friends, maybe even with your family, right? Just imagine going through life not being vulnerable, which is a gift because it means you're feeling. But imagine going through life without that. And all of a sudden, you and your loved one who maybe caused you pain could find a way to mend that bridge. And like, we're delaying so much when we're not vulnerable. So I want you to walk away from this episode, whether you're watching or listening, with a few things. Number one, I want you to set out to find your safe space. As I mentioned, I'm not prompting you to go to the top of a mountain or a rooftop or a club or a bar or wherever and like stand up on the bar and just like start screaming about the pain that you've experienced. I'm saying to do this in a controlled way where you find maybe a safe person, or maybe you have a safe person, but maybe another person, and you are able to connect with them on a much deeper level because you're comfortable enough to share in that safe space. Storytelling itself, clearly, this right here is vulnerable. I'm allowing you to connect with me on a deeper level because I'm telling you these things about the past and maybe even about the future, right? Because pain's going to be a part of it. You're able to connect with me on a much deeper. Imagine I just came here and I'm like, all right, go find a safe space, start small, start with yourself, do that. Like, you would just be like, Matt, STFU, brother. Like, you would look at me in such a different light if I didn't share the stories. Storytelling is a form of vulnerability. So, yes, I want you to find your safe space. But if you're like, all right, you know what? I'm not ready for that point yet. I'm not at that point. I'm not ready to do that. I want you to start with yourself. There are so many ways that you can share. So maybe starting with yourself means writing in a journal. Maybe starting with yourself means writing a letter to someone, just opening up. There have been so many times I've written letters to people that I've never delivered letters to. I've written letters to loved ones, to ex partners, ex girlfriends. Like I have never delivered those letters, but I was vulnerable enough to share them, even if they were never delivered. That in itself is vulnerability. The goal that I want you to walk away with, the action I want you to walk away with, the behavior, the thing to do, the action item is simply to open up in any capacity. If that safe space is with a therapist, if that safe space is with your journal, a pen and pad, if that safe space is with your dog, please don't discount the dog. Like the dog is a great place. That dog is not going to judge you. That dog will unconditionally love you forever and ever and another ever, right? Like 100%. There are ways to start. I'm not telling you to go and just, spew to your friends. Maybe that is your cup of tea. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. But I want you to realize the power here. You can be creating your own isolation, reinforcing the isolation you might have felt growing up as a black sheep, if that's what you resonate with, simply by hiding who you are. Period. So, again, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning into this. I planted the seed earlier. I told you you're here for a reason. Part of that reason might be to share this with someone. So, I'm going to water that seed and put that on your mind and on your heart right now to make sure that you're sharing this with someone. And then, furthermore, I want you to make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube or catching this on the go on the podcast apps. Make sure that you are subscribing so that you do not miss these episodes. Until next time, everyone, be blessed. Peace.